Hello, it's Kasia,
And Kasia.
and we're here today to talk about our passion project about AI narratives that you might have heard about. If not, check out the latest episodes. And today we're going to talk about.
Our narratives, the 20 of them, or as much as we can fit into one episode. And if you want more context, you can head back to our profile and find the first episode that talks about our intuitions that led us to this project, our positionalities within that project, and what interested us. And then the second one covers our methodology and process up to this point, so you can know how to do it yourself if you want to.
Yes, I'm not sure I would recommend it because it's pain and tears and everything, but yes, so much fun. So, so today we're gonna actually talk about the narrative, so the essence of the project, and we're gonna do it. We had long discussions on how to present those, really long,
Mm.
over I don't know how many days and nights actually, and how to put them in some kind of boxes. So we thought of the narratives as apples and those like groups of narratives as boxes. That's what we used, and we tried to find the best boxes and to kind of fit all the apples. But we had so many versions and so many ideas of putting that. And maybe one day we'll show you that in some way or form. But today we chose one version.
So, without further ado, join us on Miro now, and we will do our best to give you a slice of our mind and walk you through.
So if you're listening to us on Spotify, we'll try to be as accurate as possible. But if you can just change to YouTube. I've heard some people listen to podcasts on YouTube. I don't, but I've
I
heard of
do.
them. Yeah, I know. So anyone who is brave enough to do the podcast thing, the YouTube thing, then you can actually see what we're talking about, and maybe it will become a bit clearer and easier to imagine.
Okay, do you want to start with one of them? Is there one that screams to you right away?
Yeah, I think maybe we can talk about the axis first. So,
Okay.
so someone who doesn't see it, they can understand what we're talking
Mm.
about. What's the metrics? So we put it at like the x metrics. The x axis is basically to the right is common resource. So thinking of AI as a common good. Maybe you could think of a open source of something that is
Mm.
shared that belongs to the community. However you describe the community, but like I don't know, community, society, a bigger group. And then on the other side, we have competitive advantage, which is about control being mine, being taken, and individualistic approach where
Mhm.
you have to either produce or acquire it or govern it to make sure it's good for you, not for the communities as such.
Right. And then in terms of the other axis, you can see that it's an emotion driven one. So one is more about calming down, coping, and getting your emotions to a steady place. And the other is about cautioning or even scaring us or you within the narratives. And sometimes that's consciously used, this emotional language, and but not necessarily. Like, we as humans, when we talk, we use different tonalities of our languages. So let's not assume that always this emotional baggage is completely from the get-go sort of coded hard into the narrative. Sometimes it's just a reflection of positionality of a given discourse and a person who's driving that.
Yes, and I would add it really depends on also on like a cultural context and like what kind of emotions or like what kind of ways of talking about certain things are more present.
Mhm.
Like we're Polish, so basically we're more gloomy and more depressive, and we're
I
sadder
heard
people.
yesterday that Germans are the same, that they also love worrying. And so I think it's about like Central European gloomy weather for 6 months, not letting you to think in any other terms.
Yeah, I always say like we're Polish people are sad and serious. So maybe it applies to a wider region, But on the other hand, we're talking about this in English, and we were sourcing, most of our sources were in English, so that also, yeah, it's also like an English. It depicts the English way of thinking about the world, and also maybe the underlying emotions and the way they incorporate it to the messaging. No.
I would say it incorporates the way English language enables you to phrase thoughts. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it necessarily reflects the English way of thinking or British way of thinking.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
broader than that, but for sure, it's sort of dressed up in English phrasing.
Yeah. For sure that, and I'll end my sentence or lack of the sentence here.
Yeah.
So let's go to the first quadrant, to like northeast maybe.
Okay.
So to the calm down and kind of common resource playground, which
Mhm.
I call the romantic meadow of prosperity.
Exactly.
A place, a wonderful place where you have several narratives that we can tell you about. So one of them is that AI, there's like AI driven utopia.
Mm.
AI will take care of all of your problems.
Hmm. So think about it as a happy pill. Like this is where all the text appeared that throw AI on any problem that we have, which is cancer, climate change, and just trying to make it fit that realm as a solution, as there's an underlying level of like techno solutionism there. So, and this is also a very much hope driven and not yet diagnostic, but rather rather
Prognostic.
predictive. Sorry.
Pr- Prescriptive or
Yeah,
prognostic.
yeah, prognostic way of thinking. So you can meet that sort of narrative both in EU documentation and reports that proposes where we could apply AI to solve certain issues, as well as in upskilling courses on different platforms that, while showing you how to use it, also tell you how in future it can solve issues you now face in everyday life. So there's a lot of not only hope but also this like optimism about how that can bridge a lot of gaps that we now face or overcome hurdles. And yeah, there's also a nice German word that I think is maybe not internationally recognized, but certainly there are some European countries that use that term, which is ersatz. Yeah, or a happy pill. Hmm?
Yeah, and I would add here that it's I call it like a bait and switch a bit. So yeah, now we're giving you autocomplete in emails,
Mhm.
and uh, accelerating certain things or helping you edit a podcast or whatnot.
Mm.
But then actually, eventually, someday, AI will solve all of our problems.
Mhm.
So on one end, the problem here is that it's so futuristic. It's also so positive, so it might make you feel like, oh, I don't need to act now
Yeah.
because something it's AI will do that. So it's
Mhm.
about giving a lot of agency to a being, or I don't know, to a tool or to a technology
Mhm.
that doesn't yet have this agency. Uh,
No, and also I think it sort of takes away it stops being our burden to solve those issues.
exactly.
We sort of are quick to decide it's technology will do it instead of us. So it's no longer something that occupies our mind, our to-do list.
We don't have to, right? Because AI will
Mhm.
do it.
Yep.
But then we also know that technology in itself doesn't solve problems, because there
Mhm.
needs to be like a societal change or cultural change
Yeah.
or whatnot to be able to use it,
Yeah.
or for people to be able to use it. Obviously, sometimes it will be just introduced forcefully, but doesn't mean it will actually get to solve a problem
Yeah.
that it was supposed to solve.
So as you
Uh,
can see, oh sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is like what we've been describing right now, of course, in the realm of this romantic meadow of prosperity, is mainly the utopia and taking care of all our problems. But that wouldn't stand on its own. It would be like probably too far fetched and too optimistic. So you can also look at its this whole sphere in how much it is sort of rooted in science or very rational progressions to sort of build up this idea of solving of all of our problems. And those are all the narratives that talk about AI being as highest human accomplishment, which is something measurable, talking about technological advancement and progress, which is also very tangible, rational, and like linear, so you can like count on it and stand on it with your vision of the future. And this also already experienced feeling of having AI accompany you at work and at private life.
Yeah, and I want to add here, like to dive into one of those narratives still. AI as the highest human accomplishment.
Mhm.
It's it's so, I would say there's so much admiration towards this
Mhm.
technology, or even awe. So it's the highest form. It's like the best thing that ever happened to us.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it actually comes from or like we heard it in Sundar Pichai, so Alphabet CEO, quote, who said, "It's the most profound technology humanity is working on, more profound than fire or
Mhm.
electricity or anything that we have done in the past." Doesn't it sound like a very big deal if you say it's better than
Absolutely.
fire or electricity?
Yep. And it's very much intertwined with those concepts of prosperity, advancement, and just moving forward, or even leaping forward. Um,
Yeah, and that it's, I don't know, just like this way of looking at it um, makes me feel it's like very grandiose,
mhm.
very
Agreed.
elevated,
Yep.
and maybe possibly without a reason for that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, making those claims, nothing other than opinion substantiates those claims, right? Because there's no other measurable way you can compare it to wheel or electricity.
Exactly.
Mhm.
It's an
It's
opinion,
our
but
opinion. Yeah.
it's an opinion coming from the Alphabet CEO, so it's very strong.
Of course, and
And
it's let's also be clear that it's not only coming from him. Like it's
of course,
perpetuated enough to be surfaced in those results we've made. So it's a very strong voice and a very strong predominant type of story we make around AI.
yeah, and um, that it makes it also unstoppable to some extent, or
Mhm.
like why would you go against something that's like an accomplishment, a human, like the highest form of human accomplishment, the highest form of progress, then
Agreed.
like if you're anti that or anti this way of doing it, you're anti progress or anti humanity even.
Mhm.
uh, so it makes it
Yes,
very, very heavy.
absolutely agreed. Agreed.
Looking into another one of those about AI development is a moral obligation. That's very similar, I would say, to the highest form of accomplishment, but it adds even more gravity. It
Mhm.
adds morality to the equation,
Mhm.
and makes it, I don't know, a moral, ethical, almost like a religious thing that we
Mhm.
have to continue.
Yeah, and
Uh,
that's also why it's not up there with like those calmings, rational cold narratives, because it's becoming warmer. We're moving down the scale, and we're also getting nearer to this like cautioning language of looking deeper into those issues and like actually taking a stand and not
mhm.
just looking at it in the realm of linear progress.
Exactly, and it feels like because developing AI as a moral obligation, duty, um, action to future generations, to our children, because it
Mhm.
can solve. There's like this underlying again that it can solve a lot of problems and significantly enhance our capabilities and our maybe lifespan or the way we live, the
Mhm.
comfort. So it might imply also that proposing to slow down or to proposing to put any
Mhm.
guardrails, any rules around it, it's then it's again immoral, right?
Mhm.
To say stop and let's think because there's
Mm.
the prerogative to go because it's moral.
Mhm.
Is it though?
Yeah, interesting. Like for me, it's for sure more about um the stance you have to take and sort of like actually taking sides and deciding what sort of ethics you want to bring into AI. But yes, within this meadow, this is for sure also pressuring for decisions, pressuring for not stopping the progression and not sort of using the fruits of the invention. And I also want to point out this narrative of like accompanying us as humans, because I think it's interesting that within this like optimistic and positive narrative that you for sure all experience via LinkedIn, via many invitations to courses, conferences, and so on. This is where we sort of move a little bit away from like how do we impact humanity as a whole to
Hmm.
like how is your individual relationship with AI structured, and we are here in this like green space of equality. So AI is at your side, you're marching with it, and you build a one-on-one relationship to make your life easier. So that's sort of something that is part of the perception of AI, but it's also something that impacts how we build those AI solutions. So it's not only about defining what's right now, it also can be viewed as prescriptive in a sense that like we want to invest in time, effort, money, whatever, into solutions that will create a world in which AI walks with us.
Yeah, and it's a companion basically,
Mhm.
and um, here it's also the calming. The narrative might be calming because it's about it's only a companion.
Mhm.
It's not your boss, or it's not gonna guard make decisions for you.
Mhm.
It's gonna be a nice companion to the meadow of
Yeah, and I also
prosperity.
think it empowers people to a certain degree, meaning that like this is something we experience all our lives, like creating one-on-one relationships within work, school, private life, whatever, right? Like, this is something we feel knowledgeable about, we feel confident about. Of course, like there is still a loneliness epidemic and so on, but this is our bread and butter, not technological bread and butter. So it is for sure a way to navigate certain fears, and it's also a way to propagate um, a way of talking, a way of describing, and then impacting the mental model of AI.
And we've seen this narrative, this picture of AI so
Mhm.
many times already in pop culture, like right, like R2D2 or
Yes.
Hair,
Uh-huh.
uh, like in
Especially her.
movies,
Yeah.
huh?
Especially her. It's very relational.
Exactly. So like in so many texts or films, you could already see that being depicted. So it also makes it quite obvious or quite,
Mhm.
you're welcoming this, like, because you've been prepared by the pop culture to enter the world and
Yes,
kind of
agreed.
wait for your robotic companion, and it's finally here.
It's finally here, and it's like it's for sure a way to familiarize yourself with AI. And I think all of us have been doing that past for the past 2 years with how we don't necessarily build but use AI solutions in everyday life. So
Exactly.
it is a good gate to enter that world. And then the last one that is already transgressing to a different quadrant is the digital god, so AI becoming omnipotent. So
Mhm.
it's common because it affects all of us, or a big majority, just like a big church, a popular religion would. Yet it also um, goes beyond us. Like it becomes something that our cognition not necessarily can cope with or deal with.
Yeah, so it's like you drew you drew it before that, like um, the companion is next to us, or
Mhm.
it's maybe beneath us because we don't see it necessarily as a like as a being. Maybe we do, maybe we will, as in her. But then when it becomes a god, because it becomes omnipotent, that's why we call it god.
Mhm.
Then it's, yeah, it's outside of the realm. It's somewhere there. It's in the cloud. It's
Mhm.
on the cloud or in the cloud. And then it's much more difficult to have a relationship with such a
Mhm.
being. And here it's also that we've been discussing a god. So when AI becomes this creature that can do whatever and also can take decisions,
Mhm.
we don't know it's gonna be good or bad for us.
We won't even have visibility of what it thinks and does, like we can with someone we have relation, like immediate relation with, right? We can't really ask it. We maybe get to see some tangible proofs of its action, but it's not like we have an under the hood visibility of the process of this decision making and impacting the reality.
Yeah, and I would say one of the quotes that kind of spoke to that narrative says, "As for God, if He doesn't exist, he or she, I would say, if He doesn't exist, then why not just create Him? This is
Mm.
what HDI is supposed to be: an all-knowing, all-powerful entity capable of again solving all of our problems and creating utopia."
Mhm.
Um, so then AI is again given all this agency, all the decision powers to make decisions for us. And here it's in the middle in our axis because we don't know whether it would be a good god or a bad god.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we've
I
discussed it a little bit. That it might be like those ancient gods that has better or worse days. I am personally a big fan of the TV series Chaos, sadly cut after first season, and like Jeff Goldblum does an amazing job of being Zeus there and like showing how omnipotent but also very feeble his likes and dislikes are, and yeah.
and here, the assumption is that this digital god wouldn't have those kind of emotions or wouldn't have those kind of bad days because it's digital and it's like omnipotent, but also there's an assumption it's what's the name, it's not emotional, it's
Rational.
rational. But then it's based on our biases, on our data, and things that we produce. And we also chatted about these Asian gods in the sense of us giving something to them.
Mhm.
What's the name? Like when you had to,
Some
uh,
offers. Yeah.
yeah, some offers that you would have to do every month or every half a year
Yeah.
for it not to be angry at you. And in the sense, we have given all the data that
Mhm.
that's our offering to the god, and we'll probably have to produce more data to be able to
And
feed the
also
god.
resources, like we would need to sustain that gut, right? Like
Yeah,
even if we learn from all of our mistakes and there is no gut and that we get to redesign our own new gut for the digital, fully digital era, it still would need constant sustenance, just like you do with praying in all the big monotheistic religions, and just like you did with offerings in the more ancient ones.
exactly. So
Yeah, let's maybe move now to the polar opposite.
yeah, sure. So the jury on the god is still out. We don't know whether it will be
Oh
good
yeah,
or
the
bad,
cherry
or
on
like
that
what we
is,
would
yeah,
make it of it.
that's nice. Okay, so we are now going to the quadrant that is so pleasantly named Silicon Rat Race. Okay, so the polar opposite of what we've just described as romantic meadow of prosperity is Silicon Rat Race, which lies between cautionary beware. Not access, what I wanted to say. So it lies between the beware cautionary tale and advantage, competitive advantage. So Silicon Rat Race is, as you may imagine, very much centered around narratives that point to both business and racing.
Yeah, and I think we could start with the race
Mhm.
because it's developing AI is a race. That's what we hear. We need to go as fast as possible, which also
Mhm.
means that you can break things on the way, or
Mhm.
you can produce something that's not good, and then after that, like we had like I don't know, ChatGPT or whatever being introduced, and there were lots of either bugs or the way that it would produce content that was necessarily not necessarily wanted. I don't know. You could ask
Mhm.
it how to rob someone or how to produce a bomb, and
Mhm.
so there were no guardrails introduced because it has to be so fast. And this really reminds me of the space race that we were. I mean, I was taught at school at least, um, and that the powers, the superpowers, have always been in a race against each other, and now it's towards a technology. It.
Yes, so
Uh,
this race is very much a competitive space, which being competitive naturally means a market angle, an angle of capitalistic competition, or sports competition as well. So let's dive into it. I think um, one of the ones that you coined is AI will become our ultimate or ultimate AI boss, right?
yes.
Uh-huh.
So there was
What's
like
that
a
about?
yeah, there was a play of words that
Mhm.
maybe looks better when written, not when read. But yeah, basically that uh, AI it's somehow similar to the God, but it's more mostly focused on effectiveness
Mhm.
and optimization. So for AI to be able to make decisions, maybe it will become your boss and will make decisions for you because it's more rational, because it has more information, because it can make better decisions. There's this assumption it can, that
Mhm.
it will be more rational and it will be uh, deciding better. So then this relationship is me. It's submissive, right? Like we're below the boss. I think of like Super Mario or some video game that like at the end you have the super boss and like the ultimate boss and you have to shoot it. Here, I don't know
Mhm.
whether we'll be able to shoot it, but it will definitely have to uh, produce things for the boss or
Mhm.
do things, and it's already happening, like do things that AI cannot do because it's just too expensive, like
Mhm.
caring for certain things or
Mhm.
like for human beings or
And I
cleaning.
also think this narrative points to this like fear a little bit of people being subjugated to directions from AI, and also this like AI that is very generalized rather than specialized in certain areas. So it has this overview of everything, while you need to do specifics for it. And because it's so omnipotent and so wide in its competence, it can't necessarily do what it's told. It rather has an overview and takes decisions and decides the direction.
Yeah, and we already see some of this today because, for example, if you're a content creator, let's say on Instagram, and you produce some content that the AI doesn't like, or sees it as inappropriate or
Yeah.
whatnot for the community, you can get a ban or whatnot.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very difficult to kind of get to talk to a human being that would assess whether this picture was actually in violation of anything.
Hmm. So one of the things that sort of drives the space of YouTube is how good of a thumbnail you made for your video, and you can
Mm.
change it throughout the life of your video and see whether or not it creates spikes of visibility, of engagement, and whatnot. And it's actually not made for humans. It's basically made by humans, so machine learning can pick it up and feed it back to humans. So both the audience and the creators know those faces are crazy and don't necessarily appreciate them, but because the intermediary is technology, we're adapting to its way of deciding of what should be visible and not visible to us. because it can only read extreme expressions, basically.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
So we have those small bosses
Yep.
around
Already. Yeah.
already, and we are adjusting to them because we
Mhm.
have to, because the system is put in there this way.
Yeah.
But it also, there's like this really sad reality where, people like the AI is the boss, kind of makes decision, but then people doing all the really bad thing, like, or like this really horrible thing when they have to what's the name, where they have to check
Label
the
just.
content
Yeah.
later. One label content, but then the other one is also check the content, which is, I don't know, about sexual
Abuse.
abuse or whatnot, and
Mm.
those are human beings that are checking this,
Yes.
and
For the benefit
that's
of the technology.
exactly, and they are underpaid, they are in global south, and it's a very sad invisible
Mhm.
part of AI.
And it's not necessarily where the investment in AI goes, not to those resources who have those
No.
difficult tasking tasks, for
Yes.
lack of a better word. Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes this whole race possible is the fact that we have multiple angles, which means multiple narratives that support the space. And the next one after the boss would be that it's a must-have investment to stay relevant on the global scale or international stage, right? So it's an imperative to be a superpower, to be relevant, to be visible, and not to, yeah, become forgotten or irrelevant.
To even like, it's not, I think it's not even to be a superpower. Obviously the superpowers think
Yeah.
about this as like they have to remain a superpower, so they have to invest in AI because
Mhm.
it's this, the biggest technology after fire, and
Yeah.
like even like more than fire and electricity, blah blah blah. And on the others, on the at the same time, it's for other countries that haven't had those many resources or haven't robbed other countries of other resources. They were robbed. It's still, the thought is like we have to try to do something to be able even to
Yep.
sit at the table, because if
Mhm.
this race goes further, we might even not be able to kind of communicate with the world
Mhm.
or be able to be part of this progress,
Mhm.
because we made up being those people who, yeah, tag content or take care of those people, like do those jobs that AI cannot, but
Mhm.
those will be and are underpaid jobs,
Mhm.
and are not the best kind of future you can imagine for yourself or your
Yeah.
family.
And if you dial up the fear, which means going down to more of a beware space than a calming space, you stop talking about like must-haves and you start talking about more in terms of this narrative of developing AI is a race that we need to go through as fast as possible. So the governing value here is speed, because otherwise the competitive advantage is lost.
Yeah, speed is progress, or like
Mhm.
progress goes through speed, and it has to be, then again, it has to be fast. We can break things on the way. It doesn't matter, because the because being speedy is value in itself.
Exactly.
Um,
And it's sort of also the only means to uphold this relevancy and to uphold your position, because it's less about creating common grounds that will shift all of humanity's experience, way of living. It's about who does it better, and
mm,
that the better is measured in who does it faster, who achieves a certain threshold sooner.
yeah, and I think there's like, we also talked about what emotions are
Mhm.
related to those
Yeah.
narratives, maybe from which emotions they like they are born. And I would say there's lots of like anticipation,
Mhm.
vigilance, like being like, oh, what's happening, and also anxiety.
Mhm.
And I think anxiety that propels this, like, oh, we have to go faster, but also anxiety that comes from this narrative of everything is so fast and we have to, move fast. That also brings anxiety. So I would say there are like lots of anxious people around this
Mhm.
silicon rat race. Um, And there's like one of those most prevailing narratives present here as well, that AI will take our jobs.
Of course, and this is one of the ones that you can see with Barai. I mean, this is something that I think screams the most, and it's not something we needed to necessarily dig that far, that deep to find. And I also like, the more I listen to us talk about it, the more I feel it's like you have to go through the race to achieve the romantic meadow of prosperity. Almost, I mean, this is the bait and switch, right? That you often point to. You kind of, this effort, this tempo, and those
Mm.
compromises made on the way are done in the promise of this promised land that is full of prosperity, easygoingness, easier tasks, and yeah, loving God that will be made with all of the mishaps of the previous ones in mind.
Yeah, and there maybe in the meadow of prosperity we have
Mm.
universal basic income, so we don't have to do many things. But yeah, I do like this this connection between those worlds.
Yeah.
That first we have to be really fast and we have to go, but it's a promise that we'll get there.
Mm.
But how can we get there from like thinking about ourselves, like in the sense of individualistics, in the individuals or as states, as communities, like closed communities. There's a promise that then we'll be able to go to this land when common resources are important and like communities important. I
Mhm.
think that's a very big bait and switch, and it's a very big overpromise that we'll be able to switch all of our kind of way of thinking to get there.
Yes, and also that we will actually be able to apply it to all of the problem spaces that we have. And that it's gonna, once we build it with only speed and advantage in mind, it's gonna be actually then applicable to all of the common problems and common and global issues that we face.
And to whom it will be applicable, because it's still the rat race
Exactly.
assumes it's very like capitalistic built,
Yep.
and it assumes there are
Yep.
people who make less money to be able to build something, like again people annotating data or
Mhm.
caring for human beings, or
Or competing
doing
for natural resources with AI.
exactly like working in the mines that help make it make build it, but without any of this prosperity, without any of the goods that come out of this.
And it's not an
So
issue we haven't solved before or like tried to tackle before. We have talked about wealth distribution and like means of production actually benefiting those who product them. Like we've been talking about it for 200 years, right? It's not a
hmm,
novel concept. I just don't want to also omit one last one that we have
yeah,
here, which is AI is just intimidating. Full stop. I think it's a very like prominent way of people reflecting on it, not necessarily jumping to like fully anxious way of saying it's gonna take something away from me, it's gonna take my means of supporting myself away from me, but it just makes me intimidated. Like I don't really grasp it, and I feel like I need to. Like I don't really need it to grasp what cloud is to use it here, with all of the importance and like the pressure that is created within this competitive race. The intimidation becomes a sort of a reaction to it.
yeah, for sure. And um it feels like it's so difficult to get into
Hmm.
using it. And for some, there's also a story that the AI is widespread and it's easy to use, and whoever has access to internet can actually use it.
Yeah.
And it's also a very beautiful story for people in the West that have some time, even if they work 8 to 10 hours a day, they
Yeah.
still have some time to be able to go and research for themselves.
Yeah.
If you have like, if you work for 10, 12 hours in a physical job, be it in the United States, be it in Kenya, be it in Poland, I don't know, it's just, if you are not privileged enough to have this space to do that, then it doesn't matter whether it's $0 or $20. you
Mm,
won't be able to do it. So then you
absolutely.
might feel intimidated.
And then
And
you also will learn sooner or later, or later, that it's hallucinating and it makes mistakes. So I think like one of the fears we all have as adults, especially professionals, like working people who have a certain role as a professional, um, we don't like being silly, right? Like silly is for kids. So I
mm,
think it's also part of it. So like whether or not you've touched AI, you know it sometimes acts silly and like it can give you false information. So I think it creates this barrier even beyond the physical ones, like you've mentioned, like actual lack of time or resources to get acquainted with it. I also feel like then what? Like you're gonna ask it something, you're gonna start applying it to something, and it's gonna lead you astray. And how will you know that? How will you find out? How will you judge? It also I think it also makes an invisible barrier to fully not be intimidated and enter the sphere and impact it in any way.
yeah, I think recently Julia Chapa
Mm-hmm.
shared on LinkedIn this study that when AI is used by scientists,
Mm-hmm.
the best scientists get like 75% better, or like better results,
Mm-hmm.
and less like bad scientists, I don't know, like just normal scientists,
Mm-hmm.
they get 25% of
Mm-hmm.
better results, like our effectiveness of their studies. So it also shows that, if you, it's not distributed evenly, because first you have to already have some certain skills to be able to use it well, as you said, like to be
Mm-hmm.
able to assess whether it's hallucinating, to assess the results. But also you have to have the time to invest in the learning,
Absolutely.
and I don't know, be playful about it, or be
Allow yourself to make mistakes, right? Like,
exactly,
yeah.
to have this way of thinking that failing is okay, is good, to kind of come back to this curiosity that we have lost as adults, and blah blah blah, all
Mm.
these stories. And that requires so much time.
Yeah.
And
And
if you
just
don't have,
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add to that like we've jumped from like physical work, blue collar work to scientists, and it's not, and you can still think about it as like some people who have their hands tied versus like academia who's like steady and not necessarily at the forefront of. I mean, for sure there are academics who are at the forefront of pushing forward the latest inventions, but there's also a lot of academics who are on the other end of the spectrums. But there are actual software developers who get intimidated by AI.
mm,
There is a study that we've also been included in the text that we've been treating as data, which shows how insecure developers are about using AI copilots because they feel like they haven't authored the code that they are
mm.
then pushing. So does it really make them a programmer, an engineer, if they have used those crutches? And I think it's a very like very common thread. It sort of goes. It doesn't necessarily hinder onto the profession you have. It can
Mm.
be prevalent in so many spaces where you think everyone already is, yeah, has adopted it to the fullest potential.
And that really reminds us that change,
Mm-hmm.
so for us to be able to start using a certain tool or technology or whatnot, is really not only about the capabilities, but also the emotions
Mm-hmm.
attached to the
Yeah.
change. And if we hear that's gonna, like, AI is taking our jobs, yeah, we might act out of this fear, of
Mm.
this anxiety, but there's also another emotion that we could act out of, and it's hope,
Yeah.
to be able to act and get better at things and think about a better world.
Yeah, and I also think there is you can't never underestimate like you should never underestimate the power of representation. And like I hope and I think that's what sort of drives me within this project is like if we say out loud that it's intimidating, people will start being feel seen, and it's not going to be the unspoken part of AI
Mm.
because it is woven into the way we talk about AI. Like we were able to sort of pick it out and surface it, and I think it gives this moment, like it gives you the relief of like, okay, we know it now. So how can we address it? What can we do with it? How can we move forward, not ignoring that part, but introducing it and being aware of it in how we propagate the solutions, how we construct those solutions, how do we not build unnecessary thresholds for people to go through. And I think that's a good place for us
To
to
end this
pause.
episode
Yeah. Hmm.
and to say thank you for listening. And if you found something interesting, or you didn't agree with us, or you wanted to chat about this with us, so please find us on LinkedIn and talk to us.
For sure. And we can't wait to walk you through the yellow and violet spheres as well. As you might see, they are not as populated, and that's for me what makes them interesting and up for discussion as well. So join us in the next episode when we will dive into them.
Yes. Adios.